What is happening, business nerds? Happy Wednesday night. I'm hitting the live button. I got to get out into my feed here and turn this thing into a public thing so that when you guys are loving what Brandon and I are talking about tonight, you can like share it and do cool stuff like that. And if you aren't already, this is me multitasking. I'm so bad at multitasking. I'm just like the ultimate dude when it comes to multitasking. If you aren't already, go check out the Home Service Happy Hour Facebook group. Going to be dropping a lot of bullshit in there because that's kind of how I like to do stuff. I like to BS and talk business stuff. So we got the Home Service Happy Hour now, a public Facebook group that y'all can join. And if you're new to the program, we just talk to business owners about businessy things. And it's if I had to like define it, I'd say this is like the Joe Rogan show of business podcasts. We're just going to talk about stuff. It's going to probably be business related. Sometimes it's not. And very little filter, a whole lot of fun. Business entertainment, if you will. Brandon Lazar, welcome to the bar. How the heck you doing? What do you got over there? What's that red can?
Well,
that looks
I mean,
super
it would only make sense that we got a Canadian going on, right?
I was going to say, that thing looks super Canadian. We had I guess Waco Wednesday because I can't say Taco Tuesday because it's not Tuesday. So we had tacos, but we'll just say Waco. So it got that alliteration in there. But so I got a margarita in here because that was just what I had, like some lime juice hanging out and I had some tequila hanging out and they looked really lonely apart. So I put them together.
You're a resourceful soul.
Yeah. There was I'll never forget. There was like I think it was a Saturday Night Live skit before MacGruber became a movie. They did it was like inspired by a stupid SNL skit. And there's a bomb going off and there's like three people in trouble and they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? MacGruber, what do you need? And he's like, quick, hand me that tomato juice. And so somebody like hands him a can of tomato juice and he's like, okay, now hand me that cup over there. Okay, now you hand me that vodka. And then you give me that celery stick. And then all of a sudden he's got a Bloody Mary and they're like, MacGruber, what about the bomb? And the last like little bit is, huh? And then it blows up. That's just me being resourceful. It's like, hey, wait, there's some lime juice over there. Hey, hand me that tequila. What? Oh, we got to make a show. Let's go. Anyway, good to see you, Brad.
What needs to be done. I respect that.
Just solving problems, putting A plus B equals C type of stuff together. Nothing too intense. I just got back from Disney. I was there the last few days with the kiddos, and I had it makes sense in hindsight, but I had the biggest like post vacation hangover that I've had in a while. And Angela Schroeder on my radio show earlier today was talking about like the dopamine letdown. I just had the massive dopamine letdown. So if I start crying or seeming sad or anything like that, it's because I'm having a dopamine letdown, Brandon. It's hard for me to handle.
We're going to get through this and then we're going to solve all the world's problems.
I like it. One of them will be how do you refrain from a dopamine letdown on a Disney trip? I don't think it's possible. It's just too much fun. Have you done the Disney thing? You got some kiddos, right?
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit when I was at the Conquer Summit, I did Disney and unfortunately the children are not there yet. So we're going to have to do a victory lap.
You did Disney.
So I was with Brandon Vaughn, Brandon Godden, and Brandon Lazar, and we were all frolicking through Disney. So there you go, the three Brandons.
That sounds great. I think Disney would be a hell of a lot of fun with other adults. It was a ton of fun with kids, but your priorities can be a little bit different with a group of adults.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of like watching a Disney movie. Like they're for kids, but I haven't found one I'm not generally entertained by. And there's always some jokes they slide in for the adults that I always appreciate.
Certainly.
Kids don't get, so I dig it.
An elevated angle.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, I don't know. I know I met you down at Responsicon a hell of a long time ago, way back in the day down in Phoenix. And since then we've had other chats about other businesses and all sorts of stuff. At the time you had a pressure washing business. You don't even have that business anymore. You started multiple businesses since then. So we got a lot of stuff to get into. For those that don't know who you are, can you give us a little background on your foray into the home service space and kind of set the stage and And by all means, everybody out there watching, drop your questions in, drop your comments in, talk some smack, whatever you guys want to do out there, whatever you're feeling.
It's all good.
Talk
I'm a
up.
big boy. You can't hurt my feelings.
Well, I figured they'd talk smack about me, not you.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm the easy target. But
Call
Brandon,
him the firing squad.
give us a little background. Where'd you come from? What you got going on?
Yeah. So it feels like a blur, but what is 16 years ago, started a window cleaning business. I was in my first year of college.
You'd be able to drive. Your entrepreneurial self would be getting your driver's license by now.
Pretty much, man. First year of college, little old me getting borrowing a friend's mom's minivan on the weekends to go bang out some window clean jobs with a rented ladder.
Make some college bucks. Were you buying Canadian labeled beer back then too?
I don't even know if I was legal back then. Yeah, some way we were tracking it down.
Oh, I didn't know where in Wisconsin. I was to say it didn't matter. We found a way to get it,
Well, true, and we're actually 19 here too, so it's a little easier to come by.
Yeah, you're probably right on the cusp.
There you go.
You're knocking on that door.
Yeah, exactly. But no, like when your needs are few, and you're just looking to cover college tuition for the next, coming September. Make $5,000 and you're fully in the clear, man. Exactly what you're saying. It's beer money after that, right?
Just need a couple books, got this rent, got this tuition, and I'm home free. I can live on ramen for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. 99 cents a pack goes a long ways. Probably multiples back then for 99 cents.
Oh yeah.
All the inflation.
That would be a great measure for inflation. Screw all the other government indices. Just like, let me track the price of ramen. That really tells you what inflation's doing.
Yeah. I don't care about housing. Tell me about the ramen.
Yeah, housing's got these big waves to it. Like, take all that noise out. Ramen's the staple.
Exactly. Let's just get to the guts of it, right? But yeah, started there, man. And then obviously it was kind of cool because I was going through business school and I had something to like apply what I was learning to at the same time as I was like learning how much I didn't know.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a shock, I think. You know that one graph where like you start out and you like right away you're on top of the world, and then it like slumps down and you're like, I don't even know what I don't know. And then
the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know shit. Damn it. I thought I had it figured out.
Totally. And then it gradually starts to pick up again, right? So
when you were starting that business, did you view it as a business or did you view it as just like a hustle? How intentional about it were you back then?
Man, like I got business running through my veins, right? Like to give you a reference point, I sold rocks from the playground in my kindergarten class to my teacher. Like no joke. That's literally how deep it runs for me. So I mean, as a reference point. Yeah. So no, like I'm always.
How much were you peddling rocks to your teacher for?
You know what's funny? At graduation, she actually gifted them back to me, and I think it was a couple quarters or something.
That's great. That's great. I love it.
It was, yeah. But no, so like always, looking at all these opportunities from like a business lens, right? Always looking for an opportunity to bring value to other people and make a slice at the same time, right?
Heck yeah.
So,
heck yeah.
Yeah. And it's a unique industry that we're in too, right? Like it has a really interesting blend in terms of like your degree of specialization, but also like the premium that you can place on that delivery, right? Where we don't need like Red Seal ticketed tradespeople with like, 4 years of training or whatever. Like we can get somebody going in a relatively short period of time so that they're proficient and revenue generating. And at the same time, we can charge that person out for, 80, 100, 120, 150 bucks an hour, right?
Yeah. Did you, when you were starting the business out, was it, it sounds like it's intentional. Was it a long-term vision or was it just, hey, I'll get this thing going and then maybe once I get this degree, I'll go get a job or I'll do something else? Like at what point were you like, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah. So it was actually kind of cool because in the same year, I started another business at the same time.
Oh,
and it was actually
about it.
Oh yeah. It was a fleet of lemonade and sunglass stands. And we go to like the equivalent of the largest state fairs, basically. And we'd sling lemonade. And man, like that's a crazy business in itself. When you're selling sugar water for back then, like $5-6 a pop, and you're doing like 4, 5, 6 a minute, like it adds up. So for the spring, I do the window cleaning. The summer, I go do the fairs, and then fall would be back to school.
Damn, that's. I dig the seasonality of it because in Minneapolis here, July through September is always super slow, but that's like prime time fair season.
Yeah.
Maybe we ought to start doing that in our window cleaning business here. Is just take half of our guys, start slinging some lemonade.
Dude, I'll send you the link to the best lemon squeeze presses around. All right, I know this.
There you go.
And I ended up doing that for 11 years, which was kind of unique. So eventually, like in the early days, I always saw that one as like the cool one, right? Because like in one stand, no joke, we could make like $10,000 a day in one stand.
That's crazy.
And like we attended the Calgary Stampede, which is the largest outdoor show on earth, the biggest rodeo in the world, is in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we had like 7 locations there. And I actually was part owners in that venture with my mom, which was really cool too. She was a teacher. So same thing. She shuts down June. Then we would hire people on the road and sell shitloads of lemonade.
Just peddling the lemonade.
Big time, man. Dealing it.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I always took that one as the serious one. And the window cleaning, pressure washing was like it's kind of cool. Like, but it's like more like filler leading up to the 5 weeks where, we make a boatload of money selling lemonade. So
is that business, the lemonade business, was that one that do you sell it? What do you do with it if you decide, hey, I think I'm done swinging the lemonade around here?
Yeah, so it turns out it's like very much a young person's game, right? Because like reality is you're like gone, baby, gone. Like you're essentially incarcerated for like 5 to 8 weeks.
Yeah,
like
you're just sometimes on the road.
You're gone. Yeah, and it's pretty stressful because you're hiring. Like we always bitch and complain about how difficult the labor market is. Imagine trying to do it on like a temporary level, being like, here's the cash box, don't steal from me. And also like work hard and show up tomorrow and all the rest of it. And by the way, this is only a 10-day fair. And then we got to go on and start this whole damn process over again. Right. So
did you have any roadies with you? Anybody that would like travel around because they made money working for you?
Yeah, it depended on the year. We usually had a couple, but like, yeah, we're full on carnies, man.
Did you have to lose like a couple teeth and grow a weird shitty mustache to be able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of my teeth died temporarily, so they weren't lost, but they were brown. And
it was kind of like, it was just like Joe Dirt, like just your hair kind of grows into a mullet and a weird.
For some reason, the back part really took off. I don't know what it was, and then the front was abnormally short. So I don't know. But no, it was good, man. But it served its purpose in my 20s, right? Because like there, it's like, man, if I wake up in a ditch and I'm like, I'm still got my heart beating and like I can see straight, like we're all good. And it's on to the next thing, right? Like
good. Where's the next fair? Point me in the right direction.
Exactly. Whereas like when you start to slow down, you got financial obligations and people relying on you and stuff like that. It is a young man's game. And coincidentally, that obviously is going to impact the valuation on a venture like that. So in the end, we made the money while we ran it. And it wasn't like this huge cash event to get rid of it. And I like to use that like smorgasbord example, like when you're going up to the buffet, the all you can eat buffet. And like in that example, I went up like a couple plates too many, and they're big commitments, right? And by the end of it, kind of similar to the window cleaning business, when you lose your heart in something, an entrepreneurial venture, it becomes like a really tough existence, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. By the end of it, you're just like, oh no, I got it. Like, why did I do that? Why am I still doing this thing?
Totally. And in that example, it's extreme, right? Like you're living off your like cell phone data plan, trying to like tether to your MacBook so that you can like pay your people back home who are still scrubbing glass for you. And you're living in an RV and like, so you just get to this point of like, and by that point too, like 11 years in, of course, the tables had turned and the window cleaning business was like a serious like contender, and it was really taking off. Yeah. So ended up selling that one. I think it was like 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Year I got engaged.
I was gonna say, was that like part of the wedding vows? Is like, and I do as long as you sell that son of a bitch in business and you're not traveling around the country anymore.
Yeah, thou shall not sling lemonade. That was
only on thy corner of thy street with thy kids.
What I would say, like looking back on it, like number one, it was cool to do a business with my mom, right? Like that's not an easy thing to do,
Oh,
right?
that's
Business with family can be a very tricky thing to navigate, right? But we did it, and we're a good team, right? So I felt good about that. And then the second thing is like the reality that like you take stuff with you no matter what you're doing to the next business venture, right? Like that is stuff that goes in your toolkit, and it's as applicable, even though it was in the like vicinity of, selling. The other part of it was $10 sunglasses. But if it's what you're learning about HR and recruitment and, supervision of employees, in something like that, and you fast forward or reapply it to something like exterior cleaning, still holds water, man. And that was
oh,
really cool to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said, what we in the home service industry view as like a tough hiring market is
Mhm.
wildly different than trying to figure out how to solve. Like in recruiting is different everywhere you go,
Yeah.
like city by city by city, and you're solving that like on the fly, and you probably have a couple days to figure it out, or your ability to serve and make revenue goes down substantially if you don't. So the pressure's on.
Well, dude, and what you're talking about is so true too. Like kind of what you're speaking to is like the grit and resilience that we require as entrepreneurs, right? So like there would be some situations that I'd find myself in. I was once in a music festival, and at that point, like the whole city shuts down. It's this like mountain town. Like Jay-Z was there, Coldplay was there. Like it was just like the whole town shuts down for this,
Oh
right? And it's very secluded. And like the craziest things would happen, right? And you just have to find a situation out of them, right? Or an approach out of them. Like I recall one night at that music festival, it's called the Pemberton Music Festival. We had these like humongous, you're probably familiar with them being a hunter, but like huge coolers, huge coolers, right? Like as wide as your arms can reach. And that's how
yeah.
big they are. They sell them at Costco, right?
Mhm.
And we were kind of just I was doing my inventory Saturday night. Sunday was going to be the big show. All the headliners were coming on. And I had like two of these massive coolers full of lemons, right? And to me, that was like literally like $15,000 worth of sales of lemonade, let alone like there's no way I could, in any approach necessary, replace that locally, right? Like
Oh yeah, you're
to
not.
me, those lemons were so important. And sure enough, we had some drunk hooligans go through our camp, and they thought it'd be funny if they stole a cooler, not knowing, like they're thinking like beer, rum, like vodka, like what do we
Yeah,
got here?
we. They just ended up with a pile of lemons.
Yeah, exactly. Like aside from getting coal, you got lemons. So it's like, but stuff like that is like, it doesn't matter what happens, you got to figure a way out of it, right? And had they taken them and dumped them in the bush or whatever, like that would have been it, and we would have had to figure some way out of it.
So did you end up finding that cooler and getting it back, or did you just cut your revenue in half?
I mean, the thing probably weighed like 300 pounds, right? So they didn't get too far with it.
Yeah.
And eventually I just see it propped open there. And sure enough, we lug it back. And yeah, they're pretty prized possession for us, but not so much for the average camper there.
Yeah. Damn, never mind. Drop the cooler. This is way too much
Yeah,
work.
on to the next thing, right?
That's hilarious.
So yeah, when we disposed of that company, it was essentially like asset value. Cause again, like it's a really tough thing, like lifestyle wise, you really need like a very good fit, right?
Yeah.
It's tough to sell a business when you're solely requiring the owner to be involved. You're requiring them to like essentially be held captive by that business fully for 2 months, be remote,
Over like I imagine in Canada, much like Minnesota, over the 2 months of good weather.
Totally, man. That was the other thing, man. Like you guys celebrate 4th of July. We're Canada Day just 4 days before 1st of July rather. And like I hadn't got a summer in like a decade. Like through my 20s, I had to sacrifice that, right? Which to be fair, we were always at the coolest places, right? Like we go from like a huge country music festival to like the Calgary Stampede and then like another big, headlining show. But still, it was like those weren't my choices. They weren't my summers,
Yeah. Do you when you're doing that, do you have how do you get signed up to be a vendor? And I don't want to spend too much time on this topic because this is what we're here to talk about, but I'm just curious, the son of a gun.
Dan's Lemonade? 2025?
I didn't even know I didn't even know we were gonna get into this, but now you just
I
got
know.
me scratching my itch. So did you have like contracts or exclusivity with different shows? So like you were the lemonade vendor, or how do you even get like signed up? Do you have to pay them, or do they pay you to show up, or is it just like, hey, yeah, here's a spot you can rent from us to peddle your stuff? How does
Yeah.
that? How do you
There's
get
like a whole industry built around like the cashing in on people that want to cash in, right? So depending on where you went, some of them would take like literally 25% of your gross, and that was rent. So like just off the top, boom, you make 10,000, 2,500 goes right back to the show. Which, to be fair, you got nothing. If you're on the like the side of a Walmart parking lot, like doesn't matter. Like you're not going to make anything. So to be fair, it's a necessity, but other ones were flat fee, and those were sweet. So if you pay your 2 or 3 or 5 grand, but then you get to make like 30 or 40, then it totally makes sense numerically.
It's kind of like paying for a booth spot at a show as a vendor. You're like, well, we paid
Totally.
10 grand to be here.
Yeah.
We better sell some shit. We better get some people to sign up.
Yes, sir. And we came up with the saying, you don't know if you don't go, right? So it's like when you're at application season, which is usually like January for the coming summer, it's like, yeah, you can sit at home if you want, but like if you go, there's the opportunity there that you could, in fact, hit the weather, hit the crowd, be in a really good location, and make a boatload of money.
So they don't have exclusivity, but do you get to see if there's other people selling the same stuff you do, or do you get to know the spots that you're going to be to know if it's worth going, or is it just kind of like, yeah, I got a spot, and you show up and they're like, oh, you're over here in the back of the park?
Yeah, location's super, super crucial. Like I've been big into home shows for my home service business. Same thing, man. Like we'd always be the first booth right on the right-hand side as soon as you walk in. Like I insisted on it, right? Because they haven't been badgered. They're like fully willing to like communicate with people. And by the time they get to the end of the first row, they're like, don't talk to me. Like, let's go home. Right.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm trying to get over there and I just got to go and leave me alone for the love of God.
They do the meander. But yeah, no, like it varies, right? And having a good relationship with the people in charge obviously very much helps, especially like when you want to get multiple booths in. It helps if they know, like, and trust you. So again, like there's so many common themes in business that you could learn in something completely related. Like how much less related could you be to home services than, mobile vending, right?
Yeah. Vending with fresh fruits.
Exactly. Of all
Where
things.
the hell did you get the lemons from?
That's the other thing, man. We need like
lemons in Canada, do they?
Dude, they're coming from South Africa, California, and then California had a drought one year. And it's like, again, these are my problems. This is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Nobody else in the world probably stresses about, the world supply of lemon.
The lemon crop. There was a freeze in Florida. We're screwed.
Or when you go into the grocery store and you're like 30 cents, 50 cents, like, I don't care. I'm like hypersensitized, and going from 33 cents to 50 cents a lemon is like, our cost of goods just doubled, man.
That big ass Yeti cooler just went up a couple grand.
It did. Yeah.
Do you have to worry about spoilage with something like that?
Lemons hold pretty good. Yeah. And that was one of the beauties. Obviously ice sucks. And like we go through like metric tons of ice in a weekend. So you got to be careful there. And then some of these little towns that you would hold their like one and only music festival of the summer, like, you make your order well in advance. And if all of a sudden it's like thunderclouds show up and it rains all weekend, like it's a highly sensitive product, right? Where it's something you can't go without if it's super hot and it's like scorching out. But if it rains or if it's cold, then like you'll dump everything,
It's not moving. And could you take it from one thing to the next thing if you didn't exhaust most of the inventory? Or
sometimes, but stuff like ice, like there'd be weekends where I'd spend like $2,000 or $3,000 on ice, like the dumbest thing. And they didn't have Yeti back then. So, and not that I could afford that many Yetis anyways, but yeah. So I don't know.
When people are grabbing them and running away with them. Well,
exactly.
Yeah, if you would have had Yetis, then they for sure would have just hauled away with the damn cooler. They would have dumped the lemons out and kept the cooler.
Yeah. But no, it's fun to look back on, man. Glad to be done, but like fun to look back on.
I talk about that same mentality when I think back to Blue Skies and like all the businesses we had.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. I don't regret it. I'll just never do it again.
Certainly.
Like learned a ton and lot of sleepless nights, a lot of lessons learned the hard way. And thank God I learned them. And thank God that I don't have to do it again. And I'll not try to run 10 businesses in 10 different places.
Totally. I feel like when we're young, and this could be a guy thing a little bit too, but like you're just so full of piss and vinegar, right? And you're just like ready to go and climb a mountain. And that was my other thing that we haven't talked about. Like in the off season, I go climb mountains and I do like adventure travel.
I
Which is
suppose like you're in quite the area because you're in like BC, right? You're in British Columbia, so you can just go do that stuff, right?
well, yeah, but like I would do the real mountains. Like I did Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and
Oh,
then I did
real mountains now. We're talking
yeah,
like a real mountain to me is like 2,000 feet. I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're talking about traveling to go climb mountains. I was just thinking
yeah,
like you're already in a place with big ass mountains.
yeah. No, these are not ones like sitting across from the mall, right? And then I did the Mount Everest base camp in Nepal and did a bunch of backpacking through Central America. Meanwhile, like I was still working on my home service business from a laptop, which was super cool. So as soon as December hit, shut her down, and then basically jump on a plane and go Thailand, Vietnam, Nepal.
Was this pre getting engaged? Was this like pre family man Brandon, or is your
No,
wife like,
yeah.
yeah, dude, just go climb that damn thing. We'll see when you get back.
My wife is awesome. However, there's a limit to everything. And no, we're not going to Southeast Asia with the fam jam. So
Not yet. Not yet. What if your kids are all about it?
we'll see. Baby steps, literally baby steps. If we can just, well, I mean, we're out of diapers, so I feel good about that. We got to get the baby gate down first.
Yeah. We had like a not a recess necessarily, but we got like a 7-5 and a 1. And it was weird getting back into like baby diaper mode. But I think like we cut it close enough that we weren't so far away from it that we couldn't like readapt. But
That's
it is weird.
important.
When we did Disney this last week, it was just like, yeah, he's staying back with grandma. It's just not going to be the same. The 5 and 7-year-old, they can hang. They can, their endless energy. He would have been a bear. That'd have been rough.
Yeah, I feel like my heart goes out to those people that have a huge gap between the kids, and then they're like out of diapers. Nothing's like childproofed anymore, and then it's like boom, back to square zero.
Yeah, we still had all the gates. Like I screwed them into the walls, like they're fixtures in the household, but at the top and the bottom of the steps.
Yeah.
They just hadn't been used in a long time. We might have even like snapped them off, like they pop in and out of the brackets. I don't even know if we had them out, but we did have to figure out. There's one room that is like turned into the Lego room, and a 1.5-year-old can't be trusted with like the Star Wars Lego set. That for choking reasons, but also I think the 7-year-old would probably kill the 1-year-old if like a set of Legos that they worked on for a day would get broken. Like,
and they would be the mad one at that point.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because like, I have to remind my older kids. I'm just like, you guys. His only job is to break your shit.
Yeah.
What don't you understand? That's
He's
his only. That's his only job. So like, when you're building stuff around him, just build it so he can tear it down.
True.
Like, don't build anything you want.
Yeah.
Build stuff so he can knock it down. He's like baby Godzilla. Just let him do his thing.
Exactly.
So let's get to the window cleaning business. So it sounds to me like that kind of was that growing aggressively like while you were doing the lemonade stand stuff, or was it just kind of like, oh damn, we had something here? And
that was part of the frustration of the one, right? Is like you're only one person. You only got one being and one like amount of capacity and bandwidth to go around, right? And then when you're literally in an RV trying to send out work orders and, getting literally back then, still getting calls on my cell phone from customers and stuff, it's like, you're just too thin, right? So yeah, it was just consistently growing. And honestly, like I credit Josh Latimer for that Quick Talk podcast, man. That thing was powerful. And it was like the first introduction in our market and in our space of people seeing, what a system was and, looking at it from like a high level business perspective. And yeah, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah. I think back to like 2016 is when I started running Blue Skies, and I listened to a lot of Quick Talk, and I listened to anything Keith Kalfas was putting out. And I still like listening to anything Josh or Keith put out, because it's kind of like timeless stuff. a lot of it spoke to me a ton before I really got into the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
And it was just mindset related stuff really like hit home with me. But
Yeah.
it the lessons don't go away, right? And so many times like we get carried away and we have to go back to like, why the hell am I doing this thing? Like,
Yes.
what was the intent of diving into this or going after that or doing that?
Yeah.
Um, so as you started scaling the window cleaning stuff, was there a it sounds like the lemon thing kind of took care of itself. You're like lifestyle wise, it wasn't the right solution. Was the window cleaning business just big enough where you're like, and you know, that income's not important anyway because this thing is turning into its own animal and there's plenty of meat on the bone here. So let's
Me meat
if
on
it,
the bone now and, like, further potential, right? So, like,
yeah.
even in we eventually got to 3 different cities, 3 locations.
Oh no
We
shit.
had
I didn't know you got to multiple
yeah,
locations with it too.
yeah, we had 15 work vans, like 32 technicians, 4 in-house CSRs, and yeah, so obviously that's a beast, right? And, like, literally in our one main location, it's a population, no joke, I Googled it the other day, I think it's 92,000 people. We did over $1 million in a town of 92,000 people. So, like,
Yeah.
we were a force to be reckoned with, right? So, yeah, it just takes your focus and, you have to choose where you want to go with it. And that one, again, like in the early days too, with what I was learning and the new systems we got to build and the CRMs were even like cutting edge back then,
Yeah.
like what,
Yeah.
like we could have a customer profile. Like how cool is this, right?
We can see our schedule with every job that we have on one screen and see
And
and assign people to them, and
yeah,
they
and
can
it's
see
not
it on their
even Google
phone.
Calendar.
Yeah, yeah. Wow,
Exactly.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, just like it just continued to be that thing where like if I poured into it, it spat back out like really great growth, right? So we just continued to grow and scale that. And then one of the cool things too is like I really started to double down on real estate with the proceeds, the retained earnings from that cleaning business.
Mhm.
And it started out small. It started out with like we needed an office space because the HOA where we were living, they weren't cool with
They didn't
2
love a bunch of
office
base and base.
employees, yeah, reporting into our spare bedroom office.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so there again, didn't expect to be real estate shopping that week, but there we are, right? And yeah, so we started small. Just bought the unit in an office park of an office that we were going to be our own tenants for, which is a great way to start.
Heck yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean,
then
it's like it's a bill you're gonna pay anyway. You might as well pay it to yourself.
yeah, hopefully you're a good tenant because that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Oh, my
that's the
tenant.
only unknown. Don't throw a wrecker. But yeah, no, and so that was good. And then in that same business office park, we've continued to like just basically show interest. It's one of those ones where it was like built in 1975, everything's super dated.
Mhm.
And then ultimately we'd use the retained earnings from the cleaning business to buy up new units and we'd use our staff to renovate them. So
Oh,
we
heck
would, yeah, we put in flooring, paint the roof or the ceilings and the walls, couple like nice little touches, and then get them rented out. And then it's like a new
yeah.
stream of cash flow.
And especially in an exterior cleaning business, you have so many different times of the year or seasonally you're so slow and you're like, man, what are we going to do with these guys? Like if we lay them off, we got these problems. If we try to keep them, we got different problems. That's a sweet way to kind of have your cake and eat it too.
It is. And I understand it's a luxury that like, you got to work your way up to that. But like,
Mhm.
I feel like as people in this industry, we always got to be considering like what I call offshoot opportunities, right? Because like everything's pretty fragile. There's a lot going on in this world and it's pretty turbulent. And there might come a day where, you want to be diversified and pursue other things, but you're not going to get to the other things if you're not constantly looking side to side and maybe trying them out, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always it's a very double-edged sword because so many times I find as entrepreneurs we chase so many shiny objects and we get into things and we're like, man, I should have just stuck at what I was really good at, right? But there's these close enough tangents, and I
Yeah.
say close enough, and I don't know. There's probably like an intelligent word for it that I don't have, so I'm gonna just go with close enough. There's these really close things to what we're doing that either we can use our existing staff or it offsets our seasonality or it's not like a It doesn't take any capital investment to do it or other skill sets that we need to train people or develop to do it. And
Yes.
man, when we can find those things,
Mhm.
like those things are what we should focus our energy on. I don't, and I'm curious, I want to get your take on multiple locations because I think we had 6 of them at one point in time and 10 different businesses across them because we had maid services and exterior cleaning services. So we kind of ran them as separate divisions.
Yeah.
Uh, but we got so spread out that it was like we had one in Tampa, Florida, one in Portland, Oregon that Brandon Vaughn actually bought from us. We had one in St. Louis, one in Cleveland, one in Cincinnati, one in Minneapolis. It was like they were the same industry, but they were so far apart that they lost a lot of the synergy value because the home service business is so local that even though it was the same service, it was so far apart and markets are different. What did it, in hindsight, and again, I don't regret any of it. I'll just never do it again. But in hindsight, we would have been way better off staying where we were at and just growing that business. It would have been way more profitable, grew way faster.
Mhm.
Instead, we like sacrificed growth there to go buy a bunch of stuff that didn't pan out.
Yeah.
Learned a ton. It panned out in knowledge, but it didn't pan out in profit. Um,
Yeah.
as you guys did multiple locations, how did you go about it? What did you like about it? What did you hate about it?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the first thing that comes to mind is like you'd be surprised how far you can actually saturate a market, right? So it's like, so why are you packing up and going to copy and paste somewhere else if you're like literally 12% saturated your local market, right? And I think there's entirely different avenues that you can pursue as a business owner or an entrepreneur. There's new service offerings you can do inside of your own exterior cleaning business. There's new locations. Like there's always opportunity, right? I think you also got to consider like, why am I doing this, right? Am I doing it to boast that I have multiple locations, like almost like an ego stroke, or am I doing it out of necessity because like I've just hit this local turf so hard and there's nothing left here because I'm such a dominant player here that I'm kind of just tripping over myself, right?
Yep. Yep. I don't it's funny you bring up the ego thing because I think when I first started, like I came into it and that was just the vision that we had. Right. And I supported it. Like I voted for it and I had business partners and we had a board. And so we were like, we're doing this thing. And in hindsight, it was all fucking ego. Like at the time, I wouldn't have said that it was because I was blind enough to not realize that it was, but it was all to say we were doing a thing, right?
Yeah.
I think strategically we knew better and we still did stupid stuff and overpaid. Like it was all acquisition based, and so it was about getting assets under management and getting assets under management and I think it's a thin line of, and it's easy to fool yourself into thinking there's something else behind it. But big time in hindsight, I'm just like, man, it was a really shitty strategy, and our egos convinced us that it was a good strategy, but it was very much, hey, look at what we're doing.
Yeah. No, and what a big person of you to recognize that. Like self-reflection is a tough thing for us humans to do, right? And I admit, like I'd say there's definitely a component of that for myself as well. I think also too, it's such a tough thing being a young entrepreneur because like you get rewarded for being like motivated and like going out there wanting to change the world. And sometimes I think you don't know where to channel that energy, right? So
Yep.
like to be fair to young Dan, like there's always a bit of that too, of like I want to do big things. I just don't know necessarily what the outlet of that intention is, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's tough. Multiple locations is I don't think it gets talked about often enough, especially because like first and foremost, you got the chicken and the egg problem, right?
Mhm.
Do I hire people who on the best of occasions, even locally, is a tough thing to master, and put them there first. Meanwhile, now we already have overhead churning up. Or do I do this awkward commute if you're only a few hours away? And we tried to do that for one other location that ultimately totally burned down.
Yeah, just
Um,
like you can't, it gets too dependent on you, and that's not
yeah.
scalable.
Well, and callbacks suck on the best of days, let alone when it's in the next city over,
Mhm.
leading into a weekend, right? Like that's a good way to mess with, your time and your stress levels, right? So yeah, it's a really tricky thing. I would always recommend like start. I feel like that kind of 1 hour drive time out is a great
Yeah,
place to start,
because
right?
it's a little bit, if there's a population center there, it's a
Yeah,
little bit too far for you to serve from your main location, but
yeah.
it's not so far that you can't still save the day.
If you got
And
to put the firefighter hat on, like life goes on, and you
yeah,
can go save the day,
it's gonna
and
happen.
then
It's gonna
yeah,
happen.
exactly. So the other thing too is just maintaining good culture is very tricky to do on satellite locations,
So
especially because oftentimes you have a main location and then you have a satellite, and the satellite feels like they're a freaking satellite,
oh,
right?
they know
Like,
it. Yeah, they know it. They know it.
yeah, they know it. They see you one day a week, and everybody else gets like a morning meeting with you and get to talk about their life's plan and just all the rest of it, right? So maintaining that culture is a really tricky and challenging thing to do in those other satellite locations.
I'll say that was our biggest challenge with acquiring a bunch of businesses across the country. Is we thought we were buying value acquisitions, but we were buying a set of problems that were that went along a lot of our acquisitions. One was like a little over $1 million, but it eroded slowly. Like
Mhm.
in hindsight, no shit, it was going to do that.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
did a little over $1 million, but it was maid service. It didn't make enough money to pay a real good general manager.
sure.
It's still like those businesses aren't super profitable.
No,
In maid service, like it's got to be 2 to 3 million where you can like actually hire somebody to run it.
sure.
Otherwise, is the owner needs to be there. And I was in Minneapolis, and that business was in St. Louis. Every
Yeah.
other business we had was sub $1 million, and man,
Mhm.
it was in hindsight, it was a joke. I don't know. We hired Sean Day, who now runs Hire Lead Chill, a recruiting business that I'm partnered in with Michael Gregory, and he and I always reflect on that of like we bought his business, and then we're like, well, we'd love to keep you on board. Like you've got like he didn't want to be a business owner. He had gone through those lumps enough where he was just like, hey, uh, I'm just done owning a business for my marriage's sake and my kids' sake, but I love working and let me know how I can help, and I'm here if you need me. And we basically put him in charge of like 5 home cleaning locations, and we're like, okay, Sean's in charge of 5 different home cleaning locations with like basically 100 employees. Good
Yeah,
luck.
yeah,
Like, figure out how to run that.
yeah.
Man, and we always just laugh about how unrealistic that ever was, and it was probably the worst job in the world. Like he sold his business to take on the worst job in the world, and he's still here. He still likes working for me. I don't know why he signed up for that.
Last time the poor guy ever volunteers for anything, right?
Yeah, yeah, but he's
Yeah,
a hell of a dude. Which is why he's still hanging out and still here, and he's running a business with me. As he's just that cream of the crop type of character. But
yeah,
man, we put him in an impossible spot, and it's
no
funny
doubt.
now. At the time, it sucked. I can't imagine how many sleepless nights combined he and I had trying to figure out all the bullshit we signed ourselves up for. But
Yeah. No, totally. It's funny because like you go into it like it's like, what is my why? What is my end goal here? And then you kind of get detoured along the way. And then you get to this point of like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, how does this make sense? Right.
let's on that note, I want to start getting into some of the new stuff you're doing here.
Yeah.
Because you sold the exterior cleaning business. What before you did though, you had started, it wasn't Bonus Up at the time. What was the
Yeah.
original
It's
name of
called Hourly IQ back in the day.
Hourly IQ? And I know it was very much geared towards helping people kind of figure out the commission pay, I'll say, just for performance pay type of structures.
Yes, sir.
And I think Bonus Up is still geared towards that, right? Kind of a rebrand, if you will, but still one.
It was only a rebrand. It's the same product. And really what we're doing is we're gearing up. Like up until now, Bonus Up is all geared around production pay, or performance pay for production employees, right?
Mhm.
So Bonus Up is a little bit more generic, and that opens up the door for potentially handling like sales commissions and stuff like that, right?
Nice.
Because everything we develop can be kind of repurposed in that avenue.
And
Uh,
more people in our space are hiring salespeople, territory managers, account managers, whatever you want to call them, but it's getting more and more and more common.
Yeah, and it can even be your in-house technicians, to be fair. Like I think a healthy operation has everybody on board for selling something, right?
Mhm.
So depending on how you want to approach it. But yeah, no, like man, that that is one of the biggest things. Like, I'm very excited for anybody listening to this who they pay their technicians just with straight hourly wages, right? Because like there is so much potential there through the magic of performance pay, right?
I don't from a nerdy bookkeeping perspective, I
Mhm.
just find hourly pay to be such an at odds thing. It puts you at odds with your employee where they win when you lose and you win when they lose.
Yes.
And that's just at a bare bones, laying it all out on the table. That sucks.
Yeah.
Like when you can't win together, it's really hard to build a good culture around. In order for me to win, I need you to lose. In order for you to win, you need me to lose. How the hell are we going to grow this thing? And that's black and white and making it easier than it really is. But hourly is just an incentive to get people to work longer and produce less. And it just doesn't align with what a small business owner actually needs from their employees out in the field.
No, totally. And like what I've learned doing like essentially a PhD thesis around this topic in the last 4 years is performance pay is a way to affect your culture in your company and create a sense of alignment. So your technicians care about the same things that you care about, right? If that means coming to work, having healthy urgency, being on your toes, getting a lot of work done in a short period of time, or if that means, avoiding callbacks, or if that means getting reviews, referrals, and upsells, like that can all be baked into performance pay. Yeah.
I know one person that did performance style pay and switched back to hourly. I can think of one. And a year or two later, they switched back to performance based pay. Like they tried hourly because they didn't like they switched back to hourly because employees were complaining about performance based pay, and those employees were probably the ones that should have been fired. Is what it turns into, is because they weren't. It's easier for that employee who's probably like a B- or C player.
Yes.
It's easier for them to be a victim and complain about them not being treated fairly than it is for them to work harder and make more money. And that's why they're a B or a C player. And so what happened to that person was they just got that he like evoked them to think, oh, well, these people show up to work every day and they're my crew. And so I got their back, which I get. Like we're all vulnerable to that. Like I think a lot of us are pretty people person type of people. I get swayed by employees all the time because I'm always trying to create the best work environment for them possible. If my entire team was like, hey, we really want to switch to hourly, I'd have a really hard time saying, no, we really got to stick to this. I'd be like, oh, you guys all want to do that? Right? Like the empathy in me and the excitement around making their life better. But that's effectively what happened. And then a year or two later, it was just like, well, this sucks. And that operator was 1 to 2 million at the time. I think he was around 2 million when he like switched things back and forth. And he had world-class cost of goods sold. I mean, like world-class cost of goods sold. His labor was super dialed in, productivity was super dialed in, and he changed it. And one of the things I love about when we do bookkeeping and how we do bookkeeping is I'm always like, hey, part of the reason we organize stuff at Best Damn Bookkeeping the way we do, quick plug for my biz, and then we'll get back to plugging your biz, is we organize it so I can talk you out of trying to change something that doesn't need to be changed. I have a guy that does a little over 2 million now, and he has below 45% or 40% cost of goods sold for a washing business, which is like, that's the labor, that's the tools, the equipment, that's the supplies, that's the chemicals, that's the fuel, that's the merchant processing fees. It's all in there. And it's below 40%. I'm just like, dude, and his operations team, his admin team is trying to convince him that he has an operations problem. And I'm like, man, you have world-class operations. Like operations are always going to be tricky. Nothing's going to go perfect. You're going to have callbacks. You got to have a metric around it. You got to have a whatever repeat rate you're shooting for, whatever quality score you're shooting for. Like it's good to measure it, but financially, that's not the problem in your business. The problem in your business is you have admin costs of like 30% because you have all these people on payroll trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Like you can probably need to fire a third of those people to get that back in line. Like they're the problem. And the funny thing is they're doing what admin people usually do. And this is going to lead into your VA business. a lot of admin people cost a lot of money, and they're really good at one thing, which is creating more work to justify their job. And especially in the United States, administrative people are super conditioned to create more administrative work to justify themselves. They're always, if you ask an admin person, if you have an office manager or whatever, tomorrow, ask them, hey, how's your schedule looking? And they're not going to tell you, I'm pretty light. I really don't have much going on, and I would like to have more work on my plate. They're going to tell you how busy they are. 9
Yes.
out of 10, unless they're actually really good, and that would be like a good test if they actually told you they have capacity and they can probably be more efficient. But most of the time, they tell you how busy they are, and the fact of the matter is they're busy not working on things that grow your revenue and grow your business. So one of the things I love about using VAs is they tend to take your direction a little bit better and focus on things where you can help direct them to things that add value in your business, and they can usually do it for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. I just thought that was so funny. Like his whole admin team was telling him that he has a problem here, and hilariously, like financially on his books, you can see the problem is just that admin team, and they're trying to justify themselves by creating a problem somewhere else. Anyway.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, so this does impact and influence your culture, right? So like I would literally show them the highlight reel, which is on the big screen when they're coming in for their initial interview, right? And I had people that are like, whoa, like I kind of just wanted, one guy said, I just want to kind of like float under the radar. And it's like, not on my payroll, you're not, right? So
I don't want to be like a number 2. I'm really shooting for like a number 3 or number 4.
Yeah, you got a space for slot number 9. But whereas the other guys, the gals that are like the rock stars, that they're so elusive, but they're out there. 1 in 200 is the ratio. I'm sure of it. This stuff speaks to them, right? Because it's like I always work hard. I show up early. I take good care of the customer, and like nobody's ever recognized and rewarded me like what you're proposing here, right? So it speaks to the A players, and the cream rises to the top, right?
I think your 1 in 200 number is right on. When we do our recruiting stuff, it's different by labor market. If you said Minneapolis, I'd say like 1 in 500. If you said Dallas, Texas, I'd say like 1 in 50. If you said Seattle, Washington, it's probably back to like the 1 in 500. Sure. Minnesota's probably not that bad, and it's getting better actually. It was really bad for like the 2 years after COVID. But it's starting to get a little bit better. But we always said on average, it's about 1 in 100. You need at least 100 applicants to have a chance at getting somebody good.
Yeah.
They're in there.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to your recruiting system and how you weed them out. You can't go through 100 applicants. So you got to have a good way to weed them out and figure out who's actually good.
Well, in my case, like we were really hit hard by COVID and government intervention and all the rest of it. So we literally had a VA helping us just weed through the hiring funnel for our technicians, right? Because to your point, like they're out there, especially January, February, but man, good luck trying to find that person for gutter cleaning season or Christmas light season, right?
Yep. Yeah. January, February, people, it frustrates me in our recruiting company because I'm like, everybody, you guys need to recruit now. I know you don't need people until March or April, but supply and demand right now, the supply is out there and there's very little demand. If you want a bunch of A players, they're out there looking for jobs because they know they're going to need a job for the spring and they're looking right now. That's how you know they're an A player. If you wait until the spring, they're all gone. All that's left is the people that rode out whatever shitty benefits they had from the government until May, and then you went and hired them.
Yeah.
And you're wondering why they don't work out. And plus you waited too long and now you're trying to train them while you're running full speed. It's like trying to change the oil in your car while you're driving it. So
it's such a fine balance, right? Because like obviously, in my opinion, your ability to expand and contract with the seasonality is everything in a service business, right? We got to be able to expand so that we can take full opportunity down and we're not booking 3, 4, 5 weeks out, right? And Mrs. Smith is still happy to give us a shot and get on our schedule, but we have to be able to contract too. Like our hiring curve was nasty, man. We go from 2 technicians in February to 32 technicians in May every single year. That was like standard business operating, right? Which is like, again, you look back on it, it's like, I'll help other people to do that, but I'm not going to do that one again. You know?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
used to we had the same thing. I think one year we hired 45 people one spring.
Oh,
And I mean, they don't all work out, but when we actually there was one year we were spending $5,000 a month on recruiting ads, and I was just like, what the fuck are we doing? And
yeah.
then the team that we got and how good they were, I was like,
Mhm.
why haven't we been doing this every year? We spent like 30,000 that year on recruiting, and I was like, we're spending 100 some thousand on marketing, and all we're doing is getting a bunch of jobs and sending shitty employees out there. Why
Yeah.
don't we spend 50,000 on marketing and 30,000 on recruiting every year? Because that works way better.
Yeah.
Like, then we have great employees going out doing a good job, and that 50,000 turns into way more jobs because of all the referrals and the repeats and whatever. Like, we should just make sure we have really good employees. The other benefit of that is I like going to work because I'm
Yeah.
not like, fuck, is Tony going to be a dickhead again today? Or is he actually going to show up? Is he going to like
Try and fight me in the corner.
we had a guy named Tony, and he was it was weird. He was actually a good employee in terms of great at doing the job, right? Super proficient at cleaning windows and pressure washing stuff. Showed up early every day.
Mm.
Like, he was the best employee at 7 a.m. He was early every day. He was ready to go, good attitude.
Mhm.
And by 10 or 11 o'clock, anything that set him off just sent him in this spiral where he just turned into the biggest piece of shit, like on the team chat, blasting this, mother effing that. And like eventually, I mean, like we actually, it was so, I mean, I think like probably a bipolar thing, actually. Like in reality, there was
Sure.
something going on with him. But like he kind of drifted off one season and we like rehired him the next year.
Mhm.
Uh, because he was such a good employee some of the time. Eventually, I had to fire him when he broke a screen over one of like he was at a house cleaning windows and he broke one of their screens over his knee and threw it in the woods. And she was a customer that just happened to have my cell phone number because we cleaned her house. Like I had scrubbed her toilets, we
Yeah.
did her holiday lights, we did all of her window cleaning. And she's like, Dan, can you send somebody else out here to finish this job? Tony's pretty mad.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
damn it. But man, when you actually invest in your recruiting and get some good employees, it's like how much money does it cost? I'll spend anything. Like great employees make life so much easier.
Yeah. It's a necessary evil, right? That Indeed is I love it and I hate it.
Oh,
And but that's
biggest
just
love
where we're
hate.
at right now.
Biggest
I,
love
I,
hate.
yeah, I think gone are the days where you're like, show up drug free, like clean, ready to go, dress right, hard hat, steel toe boots, right? It's like, no, half this equation is us selling them on the opportunity and being very strategic and tactful about it. And then
Mhm.
the other half is them, showing us that they got something that we want, but it's a really challenging market, I
Yeah.
think, for a lot of people.
One you said one thing there that I want to quick comment on. And I talk about this a lot when I'm talking recruiting stuff.
Mhm.
Um, we switched to doing group interviews, and we filter, we have our hiring process, right? So we filter people on the front end. When we
Yeah.
invite them to an interview, it's not an interview, it's a sales presentation. We
Yes.
present, they watch and listen, and we ask them to opt in if only if they're going to love it, right? And
Mhm.
the whole time we're watching their body language, and that's our true assessment. Does it, are they interested? Are they nodding their head? Are they liking our story? Do they love our core values? We don't ask them any bullshit interview questions. You just don't learn anything.
So, yeah, what you just said there. So, listen to in between, not the answer itself, right? What
Mhm.
is their body language? Do they feel like they're a bit of a victim? Are they tired? Are they ready to rage out like Tony after 10 a.m., right? Um, like I think that's everything. And then yeah, if you can sell them on the opportunity, the group interviews too is a huge breakthrough, right? Because I think as an entrepreneur, you really got to guard your psyche, and nothing robbed me of my energy and my motivation to work in the business like a no-show did,
Oh,
right?
dude. And we're in such a no-show culture.
Yeah. Oh,
And then we take it personal.
we do.
I think if stepping back from it, I get it, right? They apply to like 40 jobs in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
They don't, if you
Yeah.
call somebody, they're going to ask you like, what job is this for? They don't
Yeah.
remember applying to your
Totally.
job. They don't
Yeah.
know. The system is different. They're clicking a bunch of jobs over and over and over again. I accidentally, I need another account manager for my bookkeeping business. I was setting up an Indeed account, and I just like was clicking through trying to set up the account. Like, I'm using our recruiting business, so I want them to actually post it and do all the work. But I was just setting up the account. and Indeed like forces you to like go all the way through. So I was just like clicking through. Well, it like posted my job. It decided the title, it decided the job description, which was not at all what I'm hiring for.
Yeah.
And I had 140 applicants. And there was 2 assessments they were supposed to take. And I casually like just was scrolling through my email of a bunch of Indeed bullshit. And like 10% actually took the assessments.
Yeah.
It's just people clicking on job ads.
Oh, yeah.
It's literally a made up title and a made up job description that Indeed posted. And Indeed's putting it in front of a bunch of people that are just click happy, not at all what I'm looking for. So, not saying they're bad people, but that is not the end all be all of like who you actually want to apply. It's trying to filter out somebody that actually wants to come work for you. Because again, when you ask them like, "Hey, I'm Brandon, and I was just calling to see if you're still interested in this job," they're gonna be like, "Who? For what job?"
Yeah.
Right. Just the game has changed. So it's just how do you most efficiently get to the 1 out of 200, right?
Yes.
That's actually a super hardworking, good, positive attitude individual.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you got to play the game. You got to sell the opportunity. And yeah, the group interviews was everything. You know, I have one of my conquerors, he does huge group interviews, right? And he knows the metrics and the ratios. Like if he sends out 15 invites, you know, 3, 4 might show up. And if that's the game, okay, like let's do it. That's the grit and resilience. Yep.
Yeah. So
now I
like,
know.
Now you know how many to invite that you can fit into the room. It's not about how many applicants, it's about how many candidates, like how many in there are really worthwhile.
Exactly.
Jim Dubois, who's a buddy of mine, and I think he's in Charlotte area, he does group interviews and he plants a person in the room. And so he has one of his employees in the room taking notes on everybody so that the person that's like doing I always say like story sell. It's a sales presentation. You're trying to vet out, you're trying to get their nonverbals. You're trying to vet out who's actually interested, who's sitting forward, who's nodding their head, who's asking questions. And he'll plant somebody in the room that has like a clipboard of where people are sitting and they take notes on what everybody's doing. I was like, man, that's pretty brilliant.
Genius.
That's how you know who's actually going to like working for you. And that we can teach them how to clean windows, how to do whatever the hell we do, but you can't teach them to care. Like they need to come with that. And if they have that, you can usually teach them how to do whatever it is that you're doing.
Agreed. We had this rule in our office where you just take off your shoes and keeps everything neat and tidy. And we would be intentionally sensitive to watching them take off their shoes. If they just like kick them off, or if it's like so slow, like painfully slow. It was like remarkably telling. And then our boardroom is at the back of the open concept office, and just watching them take off their shoes and walk across the office. It's amazing how telling that was in terms of like, are they going to come healthy urgency, engaged, energized, like ready to go, and you know, behave like that, where they're like essentially falling asleep as they take off their shoes. Right. So yeah.
That's interesting. I've never heard of somebody doing the shoe take off, but I like it.
The shoe test, man. Yeah. Yeah.
What if they were like Japanese or something, or there's some culture where they don't take their shoes off? Then what do you do?
I mean, we'd axe them. No, I'm just kidding.
Gone. You work here?
Sorry. No, we're obviously
Did you ever have anybody refuse the shoe take off? Maybe because their feet smelled so bad, they were like, no, you don't want none of that.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to pivot, right? So sometimes you're like, oh no, you best keep those things on. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell just by looking at you that you got some horrendous feet. Yeah. I think for all of our sakes, you
probably sleep with those boots on. So I'm not looking for you to take them off here for the first time in a couple of days.
Yeah, you just said you came from a 12-hour shift working in the warehouse and you've been wearing those steel toes all day. I think you ought to just keep those babies on.
Wet feet marks going across our office. Oh,
here's some duct tape. Can you duct tape your pant legs around the top of the boot just so nothing's like leaching out of there?
Just small office process here that we got going on.
Yeah, we just want to follow the rules. So what you were running Bonus Up while you were doing the window cleaning, pressure washing business. At what point was there a tipping point where you're like, now Bonus Up is the new thing that I need to be focusing on, and Ninja VA getting into that too? Yeah. Was there a tipping point where you're like, shit, I did that thing again where I have 2 businesses and now I kind of got to pick or choose? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, like I think I love the Josh Latimer quote, like the training wheels business, right? Like the home services is awesome to get going. And if you're a new entrepreneur, like what a great place to like cut your teeth, right? I think there comes a time though too where number one, after 15 years with a business that like call it like it is, like there's certain ones that stand out, industry leaders, but call it like it is. It's relatively linear, right?
Mhm.
Um, so in terms of like what you're wanting to impact the world with, via or doing it via a window cleaning business might be like a tough thing to, as your arm or your muscle, right? So it got to that point where, decade and a half is a long time. And, I had these other things that were starting to, really pick up some momentum. The other part of it too is like you always got to be conscious about like how much of your net worth is rolled up into one single entity, right? Because like it's fragile out there. We've been blamed for damaging property and people getting hurt and customers like threatening us, lawsuits, whatever. Like sometimes it's a really dark existence, right? So you get to that point where you're like, okay, I've been working on this thing for 15 years. I built it as like a great potential platform company for the next person that's a sophisticated investor. But if you don't take the chips off the table, you really do risk losing it all potentially one day, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Was there a burnout period in there for you somewhere, down the stretch where you're just like, man, I know I need to do something else. I just don't know what it is. Was that like part of the impetus of starting? I mean, Bonus Up and Ninja VA, I assume, were built out of things you did for yourself, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, you guys aren't all doing this too.
Yeah.
Like that was what got me into bookkeeping. That was what bookkeeping got me into Blue Skies. Like that was how I
Yes.
first started helping Blue Skies, and I started running all of our businesses. And at some point, it was like, oh, you guys don't all know how to do accounting nerdy stuff and measure these things? Like shit, yeah, I guess I can help you out.
I can
And then
scratch your itch.
yeah,
Yeah,
turned into like the best business we had. Um,
totally.
is that kind of how you got Ninja VA started and how you got Bonus Up going in the first place? Was just stuff you were doing for yourself?
Yeah, totally. Like I feel like my ultimate acid test for both those services is like, would I have been a client like 3 years ago of my own services, right? And if the
Mhm.
answer is like an overwhelming, like, yeah, that just makes sense, then great, we're on the right track, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, both those products they came from the trenches, man. I mean, Bonus Up, we were trying to muck around on spreadsheets and we weren't giving our technicians ongoing and regular feedback. So it really loses its point, performance pay, if it feels like a black box. And they're out there heaving, doing as much as they can, and we're not giving them any sort of feedback until payday,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that's probably the biggest challenge people have when they adopt pay per performance stuff, performance
Yes.
based pay, is they
Yeah.
don't teach their employees how it works. And so the employees are a little lost. There's some like distrust that happens as a result sometimes. And so it can, even though everybody should be on the same side of the table, it can create some contention of, well, now there's not clarity in my paycheck, and so am I
Yes.
really getting credit for everything I'm supposed to be getting credit for? And do you know how to run that spreadsheet? And can you show me the data? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, so what does that communication look like?
Yeah. And like, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but like, ultimately speaking, what we should be striving for is like, each one of our technicians should be able to explain how they get paid to their spouse around the dinner table. And if they can do it and they both are fully aware of how you make extra bonus, how you lose bonus, like what my base pay is, whatever, great, you did an excellent job, right? But if it's a tall murky, or you don't give ongoing regular feedback in terms of how they're registering on your bonus system, like for us at Bonus App, we have an iOS and Android app that's employee facing, right? So like they log on, they see how much bonus amount is essentially owed to them. And then most importantly, they see another metric and it's effective wage, right? So they have their base wage, but what am I actually making per hour in
Mhm.
the end of it all? And
Yeah.
that's a really cool metric for them to see.
Which is like they're not hourly, but it speaks a language to them that they understand.
Yeah.
And then I think that's got to be pretty damn motivating to see, oh man, last week I was producing at $30 an hour. This week I'm down to 20. Shit. Like, what was it? A certain kind of job? Was it something I did last week? What, like, how do I get back to producing at $30 an hour for me? Because I made 1,000 some bucks last week. This week I was only making 750. Like, how do I get
Yes.
back, back to making 1,000 some dollar paycheck?
Right. And like what a healthy headspace to have your technicians in, right? Again, that's that sense of alignment. Like we want them to be feeling that way because that's how we feel, right? So yeah, it's powerful stuff, but you got to do it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you in running the software side of it,
Mhm.
um, do you see big time differences in how you run that business versus how you ran a window cleaning or pressure washing business? What is the day to day? What is the operating feeling difference of going out in the field every day versus running a business that's just really happening on a computer, essentially?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, so for the last 2.5 years, I've been a Conquer coach, and then I have Bonus Up, and then I have Ninja VA. So it's all done on the computer. And like literally today, it was 2 3.5 hour blocks with a half-hour lunch, and I went home then, and it was all on the computer, right? So
Mhm.
I would say there's not a lot of similarity in terms of home service to software, but you still have those skills and abilities that transfer through back and forth, right? Especially like Ninja VA, right? Like all that is it's me knowing how to run a really great hiring funnel when I went from 2 technicians to 32 and applying it to the world of VAs, right? And then when you sprinkle in the software side of it, thank goodness, my general manager back in the cleaning days was like secretly, and he never even mentioned it. He's like a master computer programmer, like the smartest dude. So he's built everything that you see in Bonus Up. His dad helped us build out the apps. He's like an app developer. And then Ninja VA, we've really approached it from a software centric position, right? So, fortunately, I have him because you got to be very careful in software, even with him as like a very smart business person, well intentioned, very trustworthy. It's a huge investment anytime you get into the world of software.
I was gonna say, and it's always it's like, what do you think it's gonna cost? Double it, and then probably double that again, and then it's gonna keep coming because there's always this addition or this update or this whatever that needs to happen.
Or you don't begin with the end in mind and you like block yourself out from potential like expansion or functionality. And then like that's called technical debt, right? And then all of a sudden what you've created is virtually garbage and you got to start over or scrub a bunch or whatever. Yeah, it's a huge headache. And the frustrating part from my perspective or like your perspective is like I don't truly understand any of it. I can't read code, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
I
I
know what
feel
I
like
want it to do, but I
yeah,
don't know what it's doing. Yeah,
yeah, and that's like one of the Munger isms, right? Charlie Munger is like, you got to intensely understand what it is you're tied into and you're investing in. You can't say that as owning a software business, so you got to have that like trusted source. I feel like.
yeah. Is that are you guys partnered in the business? Is he an employee that just he's the dude that you've been with for so long that you're like a yin and a yang, like a visionary integrator
Yeah,
type of
he's bought into it. I treat him really well, and when we hit our goals, we celebrate them together, and we both benefit from them, right?
yeah.
So yeah, fortunately, I have that because God help you if you're going to Upwork and you're posting like, "Hey, I got this app idea." Like,
Yeah.
hopefully, you like a campfire with $100 bills because that's a really sketchy place to be.
What are some of the biggest like pitfalls of it where you're just like, oh man, I didn't know this was gonna happen, or I didn't know it'd feel like this, selling the cleaning company and doing this. And what are some of the bright spots that you maybe didn't realize were gonna come into play when you started doing this, more of an administrative remote style business?
Yeah. So, I mean, just rewinding back to like my lead up to that sale, a message for everyone is just if you're feeling like you're getting to that point, start to put the feelers out, right? Because like the process of disposing of a business can last like a year, even once you have like an agreed upon price, a party willing to step up, they have financing capacity. It could still easily be a year,
Oh yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
and if we don't even have that, and we're just listing it on the open market or through a broker or whatever, like you could be 24 months out, right?
Did you
So
did you sell your business to somebody in your network that you knew, or did you end up listing it, or how'd you go about it?
my accountant bought it.
Oh no shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Um, So yeah, and then he partnered with a number of other people, and one of which was one of the technicians that was working his way up the ranks, which is
Well, I
really
mean,
cool.
in a funny way, like he was probably the right dude to buy it. Like he knew what it was financially capable of, so he was able to see stuff, understand stuff, and say like, "Yeah, this is a good investment."
Yeah, and like yeah, he sees tons of businesses, I'm sure. So like, what a testament too, right? Of like what we built. So, but no resentment whatsoever. I wish them all the best, and I'm there to support if I can. But like kind of to your point before, the sentiment is there's no looking back, right?
No, no, and it's funny. I got bought out of Blue Skies, which I had been like the admin company I built from thin air, starting in kind of 2018, externally facing.
Yeah,
It was funny. It was like, oh shit, I built it, and then I realized I only owned 13% of it. It was part of our holding company. I was like, shit, I built this thing, but it's not even mine.
yeah,
I tried to buy it, but in reality, like I was probably the worst buyer because I can just rebuild it. So how much I'm willing to pay versus maybe what somebody else outside is willing to pay is hilariously different. Um,
yes,
and so I don't hold that against my former business partners. And it wouldn't have made any sense for them to sell it to me as investors. That would have been like their worst out ever.
yeah,
But it was kind of a funny realization of like, yeah, there's no resentment at all. It was definitely the right decision. The only um and that's not even a regret. But if I could do it all over again, I should have done it like 3 years sooner and been like, oh shit, like bookkeeping is my jam and podcast hosting is my jam. I should probably just do that more. Instead, I was like clinging on to something because it was the thing that I was doing, because it was the thing that I knew, and I was just doing it because it was where I was going. And I think
yeah.
especially when you have a family and little kids, it's easy to get in the trap of like, well, this is just what I'm doing, and I know I can show up here every day, and I'm just going to keep doing it because there's enough chaos going on. I don't need to create more of it.
No,
Um,
we need a little predictability at that point.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah,
you feel like in your remote businesses now, between Bonus Up and Ninja VA and whatever, I'm sure you already got some other stuff in mind. You kind of got the serial entrepreneur vibe.
yeah.
Is there a theme that you're seeing as you get those things going? Is there a business model that you're seeing after doing the lemonade stuff for so long, after doing the exterior cleaning for so long? Do you see a pattern evolving in these things as you get new businesses going where you're like, yep, and I ask this because I kind of see this with the bookkeeping stuff that I'm doing and kind of like reliving journeys a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there a continuous theme that you see where, whether it's a window cleaning company or a software company or a whatever it is company, like here's the things that seem to be consistent over time when you're starting these businesses up?
Yeah, like I feel like you're never done learning more about your avatar of who you're providing the service or the product or the solution to, right? And like for now, like it's my people, right? It's the home service folk. I was there, you know. I've been in the trenches myself. I've had the same stresses and the same problems and the same, stumbling blocks to contend with. Um, so I would say, yeah, knowing who you're doing it for and learning about them as much as you possibly can. And then also to just approaching it with like minimum viable product, right? Like let's see good product market fit before we get all in and go remortgage the homestead. And then we slowly start to move into it, right? But you got to be cautiously optimistic. We got to be ready to pounce, but man, you don't want to move too quick and all of a sudden, nobody's waiting to buy your stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good lesson learned in any business venture is so many times we get into something because it's a thing that we know how to do,
Yeah.
and we forget who the hell it is that we're trying to benefit and
Yeah.
and serve in this in the journey we're on.
Mhm.
I gotta hit Chris Casale dropped a note in here, which I gotta get to because he was just jumping in on my show earlier today. But first, I got to say, what's up, T Gianni jumping in the house.
He's
Um,
awesome.
Doug Brown checking in. What's up, Doug? Good to hear from you, man. Chris is down in Florida. Chris, are you at Disney? I know you're down in Florida on at an all inclusive joint. I can't imagine it's Disney because that would cost like 80 grand to be all inclusive at Disney. I don't even know what the hell you're doing down there. But he says, oh, look, I'm back and still drunk. Hi. Chris, here's to you, man. Thanks for
Cheers.
checking back in. Thanks for having one or having 20 or wherever you're at. Um, and they said, I don't know when to talk at the right time sometimes. Sorry. Says, no, just here by myself hanging. Well, thanks for checking in. Thanks for hanging out with Brandon and I. Love the commentary and the engagement. Brandon, is there so I want to hit a little bonus up stuff and I want to hit a little Ninja VA stuff.
Yeah.
This is like an observation / question.
Yeah.
I feel like 2016-ish when I started working with Blue Skies, very few people were doing performance-based, commission-based pay. I know Debbie Sardone talks, she calls it empowered pay for her CBF group for maid services.
Yeah.
I know Tommy Mello's all about it. I'm all about, like, everybody that's doing big things in the home service spaces are talking a lot about it. I imagine that creates some like higher water for you and Bonus Up. Do you have a gauge on, is it half of the businesses out there that are trying to do that are trying to, I'll say, trying to scale their business, for lack of a better word? It's got to be way more than it used to be. Do you have a vibe on how many businesses are doing performance-based pay stuff versus hourly based pay stuff that you've seen?
So I don't, but what I will say is the ones that want to grow faster, make more money, and recognize and reward their technicians are the ones that are doing it, right? Like, I think the reality is, and it's almost like a fallacy, right? Like, if you're even like, if you're in a Facebook group on, industry Facebook group, or if you're in Conquer, or if you're, listening to an industry podcast, like, you're the top 1%, right? And I think that often doesn't get recognized and appreciated for what it is. If we're talking about performance pay or you've implemented it, like, you're top 1%, right? So I definitely think it's effective, and it's been exposed for a great way to motivate, engage, retain, and grow faster and make more money. But yeah, if we're even having a conversation, like, kudos to you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. And it seems to be I won't say it's like a learning curve type of curve, but it's just like a steady, almost like supply and demand style curve where it's like more people are figuring that out and figuring the math out. And so I see it from a bookkeeping perspective. The amount of people that have their cost of goods sold dialed in all of our bookkeeping clients is
Yeah.
astronomically way better than it used to be.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I agree. No, I agree. We're actually in the process of, like, dramatically flushing out that product. And, like, truth be told, we've been intentionally quiet about Bonus Up, right? So it used to be all manual entry. You had to put in the hours worked by the technicians, and then you had to put in the value of the jobs. It was just those two data points. But obviously, when you got 95 things to do and you just miss dinner, like, it becomes a real issue.
not the top thing on your mind all the time.
Exactly. And so we API now with House Call Pro, and we have another main CRM that we're not allowed to talk about, but it's just about to hit their app store. So that's going to take away a bunch of the barrier, but also too, in the process of just really fleshing out the product and making it very simple to understand. Because, like, truth be told, we kind of made it for ourselves. We're scratching our itch, and it's a very intense product. It does a great job, but it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're like, I don't know what my target labor rate is, or even what a target labor is, So we're just in the process of making, like, a very light version of it as well.
Yep. Well, I know what their labor rate should be. So if you need help and you want to say, like, hey, if you're in this industry and you need to figure out how much to pay your employees, go talk to Dan, because he's this kind of nerd. He knows these things. That's actually probably the number one question I get. So I do coaching in a landscape lighting group with Ryan Lee. And I think we were just talking about it today with our group of, like, it was geared towards pricing, but at the same time, like, pricing, we always try to get to our price via our cost, but really, like, you charge what the market will bear.
Yep.
And then you got to figure out your cost structure that meets it. And the best way to figure that out is, especially if you're in the home service space, is to pay your employees a % of what they produce, because then you charge whatever the market will bear and your costs will always fall in line, like, by nature. Let me hit we got a question here from Doug. Actually, let me hit this. I want to challenge Chris. Challenge isn't the right word. I want to question Chris because as I scroll through, he said, "I'm back and I'm still drunk." I don't see a typo in here at all. Oh, look, he's even got good punctuation. So, Chris, either you're an English teacher or you're just playing it up. I don't think you're that drunk. He said, I don't know. He even had like emojis and then sorry and then more emojis, and he didn't even have a typo on that. And he said, no, he did have like 5 no's and no. And then he said, I'm on a 36-hour bender shooting for 48. Stay tuned for more liver advice, but not a typo.
Yeah.
Not a typo once.
Great punctuation, good grammar.
Yeah, really good, Chris. I'm proud of you. He did say, who is Brandon and how can Brandon help me? And so if you're just tuning in like Chris is, he's got Bonus Up to help you with performance pay. He's got Ninja VA to help you find administrative help. Chris says, I have no idea what to pay my guys. Probably why I ended broke after the season. I do think when you end broke, it's usually because you make bigger investments that don't pay off fast enough. Usually it's not from paying your employees. It might be because you hired people to do jobs that you should have been doing. And you probably, here's the thing I see, and this is going to lead into Ninja VA a little bit, Brandon. I see so many people rush to get off the truck and they play the admin role. Yeah. They play a role that they can hire for way cheaper than it would cost them to hire a technician. And so the owner takes the lowest paying role in the company. Not saying it's not valuable, but you can go find that role for way cheaper than you can go find a lead technician. And so you give up the highest paying job in the company, which is the lead tech job, especially like if you're 500,000 to 600,000 revenue and under, the highest paying job is the lead tech job. And people get off the truck to go be the admin and take the lowest paying job in the company because they think they need to run the company from the office. Not saying there's not ways to do it anyway. There's no right answer to that. It's what are you best at? What do you love to do? And what do people pay you the most for? But I see people rush off the truck all the time and cause themselves to go way backwards personally, financially because of it.
Well, and on that point too, Dan, like in Conquer, we have a worksheet. I love it. It's called What is the Value of Your Time? Right. And in it, there's columns for $15 an hour work. There's 50, there's 500, and there's, I think it's like $1,000 an hour work. Right. The $15 an hour work is an answering of a phone, right? It's data entry in your CRM. It's, answering an email, right? Whereas like 50 and 500 is like, go hire that rock star technician. Go land that whale HOA, right? Go, create a new like marketing calendar, right? Like that stuff's like hugely valuable. And the problem is you only got 2,000 hours in a year to give to your company. So if you're going to hang out in the $15 an hour category, then that's what it's going to be. You just multiply accordingly, right?
Yep. And it's easy to do because we get trapped into doing the busy work that we haven't delegated yet. Like yes, whatever's left, it either doesn't get done or we end up doing it. And so if we save the administrative work, it's either us or it doesn't get done. And it's the easiest thing to save because the job can get done today without it sometimes.
Yeah. And you don't get the luxury to go to the 50 or the 500 if the 15 hasn't been handled and delegated, if you don't have a person to help with that, then you're that person.
You're that guy.
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Doug asked a question here. He said, so this is great for pressure washing and maid services. How about landscaping maintenance?
Performance pay?
Yeah.
100%, man. Yeah. We do painters, we do landscapers, we do window cleaners, exterior cleaners, even like roofing. I'd say where it kind of starts to tap out a little bit is if the job lasts more than 2 weeks, i.e. like, home renovation.
Yeah. Bigger projects, it gets tricky.
Yeah. It's tough because essentially what you're doing is you're like allocating a value to that technician for their efforts, right? Well, on a, 30-day job, it's really tough to know on day 14, what did we actually accomplish, right?
I had a buddy that did a lot of high-rise stuff out in San Fran, and they would have jobs that would go like a month long. And so I was trying to help them build the framework. And the only solution we had was somebody who at least is at like, and he had 30 employees, so he had a few managers in there. Somebody has to, at the end of the week, he paid weekly. So every week somebody had to dictate % of job completion.
Yeah.
And so then you start creating like a fairness thing that comes into play. So it gets really tricky. Not to say it can't be done. It works great if you can do. It works best if you do 4 jobs a day. It works great if you do a job a day. It works pretty good if you do a couple jobs a week, and it gets a little bit worse the longer the jobs take.
Well said. And that like guesstimate of percent completion will be like, boom, 90% day 1. And like day 2 is like 95, and then like 97, and then like 85. And it's
like, oh shit. And then we found out we still need to do this and do that.
Exactly. And now we're over budget.
Yep. Chris said he first year hiring people, hired 5. I don't know what went wrong. I think usually when we hire our first people, we don't actually know what we're looking for. And so we hire people that are able-bodied and show up. And so it takes some that's like the ultimate. The best way to figure out what you really want is to hire the wrong people enough times that you're like, oh shit, like I need this. And that's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be a little bit based on your disc profile, a little bit based on their disc profile, and a whole bunch of other things. And I actually think one of the things I did in our in my last bookkeeping business and this bookkeeping business, and I did in our window cleaning business, is just got ridiculously intentional about our core values and really obsessing about them. Like, I feel like if you really obsess about what your true core values are, it really helps you hire the right people, fire the wrong people, right? I guess fire the right people because they're the wrong people, if you will. But I think that's that.
Well, that and like we can always train a skill, right? But if you don't have a core value fit, like good luck trying to change that in somebody, right? Like that's just their wiring, that's who they are, and that's where you got to start with continuity.
Yep. Yeah. Chris said he was just doing Christmas lights. He just did sales, hired 5 guys, ended up with 163 installs. So that's pretty damn good.
Chris.
It's pretty damn good. No wonder why you're sitting in Florida on a bender. You probably got the takedowns done. And Chris said, what's the name of his company? So you got Bonus Up is out there for performance pay, and Ninja VA on the admin side.
Yeah, bonusup.com, ninjava.com.
Ooh, yeah. Let's I know you got to get going here, Brandon. Give us a little rundown of Ninja VA. What propelled you? You had Bonus Up a little bit longer. I knew about that one for a while. Ninja VA is a little bit newer. Yeah. What propelled you into that? How are you helping people get their admin roles figured out?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, again, it came from scratching our own itch. We had 4 full-time CSRs in my office. And ultimately what it came down to is it's open concept. I was kind of hearing a call unfold with one of our CSRs. And basically what was happening is the person on the other end of the line was super confused. They just got a house cleaning for free and they didn't understand why, because they weren't one of our clients and they didn't request it. So we cleaned the wrong home because we inputted the wrong address. And what was even worse is that was the second time that week that happened.
Oh my God.
So
those are like the worst because it's so awkward. It's so freaking awkward.
It's so awkward, and it's not great for the profit and loss when we're expending labor and not making any money. So, long story short,
you're spending the labor to go clean it, but your admin person's also spending a shitload of time trying to schedule it and explain what happened and coordinate it, and it creates. And then you're probably getting pulled in, which always sucks. So
yeah. So I mean, at that point, that was kind of like the end of the spring season. And I was just feeling like we're paying like $25 an hour plus burdens on top, and we're getting crap quality work deliverable. One guy, he literally moved at a snail's pace. Like he was the type of guy who needed like an assistant, and he used to be like a branch manager of like a plumbing supply store. He was not the guy to be our CSR, and yet we were paying him for it. I had another lady who was like hyper emotional, and she would, I swear I'm a nice guy, but she would leave like multiple times a day in tears. And it was just like the weirdest thing. And then we had another lady, like the nicest soul, but couldn't get details. Attention to detail was not her thing. Mm-hmm. So like at that point, man, I went through and it was really quite crappy, but I had to fire everyone. I fired all 4 of them. And we started on our journey with the VAs. And, there's still definitely a learning curve. I always say like, sometimes people are expecting like this mythical creature to appear in the way of a VA. And it's like, no, the blood is still red and they're still human. So it's like, let's be reasonable here. But what I did find is like, attention to detail was great. Hunger level was excellent. You know, they were engaged, ready to roll up their sleeves, and at the end of it all, appreciative for the opportunity and for the work, right? So that was refreshing. And we used our business as like the kind of stomping ground to get it all figured out and develop the hiring funnel. And then we started to develop out some really cool software that bridges the gap for a lot of people in terms of like liking the concept of having a VA going, but they're not really sure like how to manage it. And that's where our software kicks in.
Nice. What are some of the cooler like VAs can do a lot of different things. What are some of the cooler roles you've seen a VA perform where a business owner would be like, oh, I wouldn't hire a VA to do that. And you're like, no, you can hire a VA to do that.
Yeah. So like at a core, I would start with just with a CSR, get somebody to answer your phones, send and receive your emails, work your CRM. Also double up as being your personal assistant. Like that's just comes with the equation, which is super cool. And we're talking like $8 to $10 an hour is what it bakes out to. It's still HR. So you get what you pay for, right? You can find far cheaper if you want, and you can find far cheaper technicians if you want, but we know how that goes, right? So we always, again, we're filtering down extensively. 1 in 200 is what we're still trying to find in the world of VAs. We're filtering down first and foremost on their ability to speak and write in English with like little to no accent. So like in answer to your question, we just placed one cold caller. So he's being placed as a closer and an outbound salesperson. And I swear he speaks better English than I do.
Isn't that crazy? Some of them are just like, dude, if I wasn't on a video call with you, I would think you are living in my backyard.
Yeah. And like, to be fair, this guy was a unicorn. Like he's half German, half Filipino, but like normal. And I felt like I could like,
those two things cancel each other out into an American, a Southern American accent. He's got a little twang.
Pretty much, man. And then, like they talk about the beer and the barbecue test. Like, do I like this person? It's like, I could totally hang with this dude. And yet he was one of the VAs that we were placing. And like, he's going to just be a monster for that company in terms of like closing deals. And like, he's geared for it. Like, that's the other thing is like in Filipino culture, they're okay with repetitive tasks, or like data entry is a thing over there where like 8 hours a day, if that's your job, that's what you do is you input data, right? Or like cold calling or like appointment setting is also like a known thing out there, especially in like the real estate industry. And that's all they do is smile and dial, right?
What's fascinating to me is they're very attention to detail. Like they're great at the repetitive task stuff. They're so appreciative.
Yes.
So ridiculous appreciative. Amazing work ethic. But I think just the desire they have to help and support and serve, they're what I wish every employee I have 2 people that are bookkeepers for me in the Philippines right now, and it's just like, oh my god, why? What was I waiting for?
I feel like it's like going back like 20 years in North America, what work ethic used to mean, and before ghosting was a thing, and like having to revert to like group interviews because nobody shows up. Like, I feel like that's where the VA space is at right now in terms of like appreciation, seriousness of the opportunity at hand, and like just giving it their all.
I saw a thread on Facebook where there was a back and forth going, and the guy was like, well, I only hire people in the US. And I was going to just chime in on it. And I think I did chime in and just to say like, hey, FYI, I had that same perspective, right? And when I scaled Blue Skies, that was my perspective is like, let's make sure we have our bookkeepers in the US. We want them to talk to our clients. And there's definitely a time and a place for that. And there's a role for that. But when it comes to just getting shit done and people that you want that will work hard and be thankful and appreciative of the opportunity. And one of the weird things, this was like a former partnership that I was looking into that didn't develop. But there was a guy that had a marketing company, and I was trying to like bring him into Blue Skies when I was there. And I didn't know how to like get past this, but he's like, everybody in the world that's a developer, they're a developer and they should make this amount of money. And I was like, well, no, like you're basing that off of what a developer in LA wants to get paid. There's developers around the world that will do a better job and demand way less money. And you're trying to extend what somebody in the US wants to get paid with what it's worth worldwide. Like you're confusing what the world market is, right? Like the labor is the labor and the skill set is the skill set. And you're saying it's only fair to pay somebody in the Philippines this rate because that's what somebody in LA would need to get paid. And he did that for one person, and then they retired in a year because they were a fucking millionaire. Like he was paying them like 30 or 40 bucks an hour, and he made him a millionaire, and they just retired after 1 year of working for him. And I just was like, oh my God, like he doesn't understand how markets work, and that we live in a friggin' like, yeah, we live in the United States or we live in Canada, but like we live in the world. And the world is just one big ass marketplace, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, I'm curious to see what happens, but like eventually I expect that it'll kind of flatten out. Like,
yeah,
supply and demand will flatten it out across, but I don't know if that happens in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years or 100 years or 1,000 years. I don't know. But man, I just had to laugh at that. That just cracked me up. Like literally.
Well, like what a time to be alive when like VoIP phone systems are a thing and they're great reception, great clarity. You got a cloud-based email provider. You got your CRM on the cloud. Like so much of this can be done remotely, right? And to Doug, to your question there. So the way we operate is like,
for people catching the podcast here, Doug asked, do you help a company get ready for their VA? I'm not sure I'm ready to let go of the controls.
Yeah. So the metaphor I use is I'm your real estate agent, right? When it comes to the world of VAs, I've been there and done it. We have the system software built out to help, but ultimately through the ups and downs, like I'll be there literally to the point where like I'll conduct a 3-person group interview if you don't feel capable, right? You're probably really good when it comes to conducting interviews for your technicians because you've done it a lot. But when it comes to admin or remote admin, maybe you're not feeling so comfortable. So again, that's where I kick in is like, this is my gig, this is my jam. And I'm all about creating long-term, long-lasting relationships, right? So if you want me to conduct it for you and you just sit in on it, then that's totally cool. And I've done that lots.
I got 2 questions for you, Brandon, and then I'll let you go so your wife can stop giving you evil looks from the corner of the room. Like, why are you still on this guy's podcast? How many questions could he possibly have for you? So you've done the home service business thing. You've done the remote business thing. What are the couple things like running this remote business that are strikingly awesome to you? I've got a couple that like from a bookkeeping standpoint that I didn't appreciate until I got like really immersed in it. What are a couple of the things running Bonus Up and Ninja VA? We're just like, holy shit, I didn't know it would be this awesome or this cool to be able to do X.
Like in the world of software, like if you're a visionary, it just speaks to you, right? Because you're like, well, what if we could attack this little problem like this way? And then it's like, have a conversation and like, you kind of got your implementer programmer type guy, hopefully. And then you go out and do it, So it's like, it's really cool if you're a visionary, right? And like, I feel charged up. The risk still is like, I can find myself in that $15 an hour category because like we're placing a lot of VAs right now. So if I get stuck in the like, and it's a lot of legwork to filter them down because we're extremely picky. Mm-hmm. So if I get stuck in that, then I don't have enough bandwidth to be like the visionary and consider like the different things we can give our users and stuff like that. Right. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but ability to be creative.
I'd imagine, especially in a software driven business, that's like tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So here's my last closing question. I don't always get to this one. Sometimes we don't get to this one, but it's my favorite one, which is let's assume money's not an issue. Money's not an object. And I'll say you can't haul around coolers full of lemons and sell lemonade. You can't go clean windows or pressure wash stuff. And you can't VA, you can't bonus up people. If you could do anything in the world and we'll say it's like a job related thing, it's a business related thing. But it's not one of the businesses you've done yet. Anything. What would you go do tomorrow?
I go start a business, man.
Yeah, but what? That's the question. Is the what?
And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know. I love it. I love the concept where you can be a grower, like a starter of a business going from 0 to 1, right? You can be a maintainer where like you're mid-level management type material, right? Or like modest growth. Or you can be a fixer, right? And I love being the 0 to 1 guy, right? Like just going out into the world, seeing a problem, seeing a bottleneck where like somebody could come in and optimize and give a good solution. So I mean, if I had an answer for you, I'd probably go do it. But I know it would be in that capacity. Like that's my calling, is starting businesses, right?
Oh,
So
here, I want ketchup that tastes better. You ready to start that business?
what's that?
Ketchup that tastes better. Can you start that business?
I mean, there's a process we could run on that concept.
I'm just trying to think of off the wall stuff. I'm trying to like come up with your next business. I want shoes you don't have to wear. That's one that I'm really like intrigued
Okay.
about. I want that.
I can tell you've thought a lot about this here, Dan, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just the shoes you don't have to wear has been an idea that I was working on since college. I haven't solved it yet. I don't know, but you can imagine what it would be like. Like it'd be sweet. Then when somebody comes in for your interview and they have to take their shoes off, they're already like, "Yo, bro, I'm not wearing them. Like shoes, I've got them, but these are shoes I don't have to wear."
I was listening to My First Million, which by the way is an awesome podcast. They're so cool. But he was talking about an idea, and it's this basically VA service that will watch a monitor remotely of your kids sleeping. And if they cry for more than 10 minutes, they'll give you a call on a dedicated line to tell you that your kid's sleeping. And it's like, I know the kid's crying rather. And it's like, yeah, I know the kid's crying because like I'm here and I'm a
Yeah,
parent.
I'm just ignoring it. This is all I'm trying to do. I'm just
Yeah, I didn't really understand that one, but that's a new startup right now.
That would be a good one too. That goes along with shoes you don't have to wear, and how do you make ketchup that tastes better? I don't know.
No doubt.
Doug says, "No, we are still figuring out the in-person interview." Did group interviews, Doug? I know Doug's heard me talk about them before. Brandon's on board. Group interviews, man. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for hanging out, man. I know I'm in the wheelhouse. You're like, how long is this going to go? Like an hour and a half? And I was kind of like, it's somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, and we're still between an hour and 2 hours. So I feel like I set a really low bar and we stepped over it. This is my favorite. It's my favorite.
Love it. One thing for the listener is ninjava.com/guide. We always get asked, what can a VA do in a home service business, in a trades business? I put together an ebook. It's like 20 pages long, and it's all the ways I've used a VA in various capacities. So it's just a free, fun little download. There's a lot of places.
Ninja VA what?
.com/guide.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of great VA services out there. Angela's awesome. Melody's great. We've taken a different spin on it with like a very, very tech-centric approach. We get live screen captures. You see what your VA is up to when they're on the clock, stuff like that, and a very rigorous funnel. But no matter how you go about it, like get a VA going. It is literally a secret weapon.
I get in my coaching, I get asked a lot, like VAs are a common thing because I'm like, don't, you're spending your time doing administrative shit, and you should not be spending your time doing administrative shit. Like you're better off in the field. You're better off doing something else to grow the business, but don't be the admin. Yes. And so I always say, I've got 3 people. I've got Brandon, I've got Angela, and I've got Melody. Talk to all of them. Like they might all be a great fit. One of them might be a great fit. I don't know, but I know you need a VA, and you got to talk to like the 3 people that I know, like, and trust, and somebody's going to help you figure that shit out, and you need to go get a VA. So you guys go check out ninjava.com/guide to go figure it out. And then talk to Brandon and see if getting a VA through Ninja VA is the right thing for you. And check out Bonus Up while you're at it. Like if you're not paying performance-based pay, sorry, but you're stupid. You probably need to be doing it. You're not stupid. You're just doing something stupid. There's a difference.
We still love you.
But get on performance-based pay. If you're not, you're crazy. So go do that. Check out Bonus Up. Check out Ninja VA. Brandon, you're the man. I appreciate you hanging out and having.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate this, man. I'm very humbled.
Heck yeah, dude. Thanks for hanging out. And home service heroes and business nerds, you guys know what to do. Work smarter and harder. Go earn some pride. Good night.